perfect. Well, welcome to our 13th episode of the Green Burial Chronicles with Morgan Oaks. And I'm here with Julia Huss, who is the Sales and Services Coordinator for Morgan Oaks. Now, for our listeners, you might be like, not that we don't care about you, but like, why are you interviewing the Sales and Service Coordinator? But before I ruin that, Julia came to us about 2 months ago. Okay. And she has some pretty cool death care industry experience. And so my vision for this podcast is for those of you listening and just like want to know, like, how does somebody just decide one day, you know what I want to do? Death care. And then when they do decide that, it's like, cool. So where do I go to study death?
Yeah.
So we're going to get into that. But Julia, before I go down that path with you, I would love to know a little bit about you. I know it'd be good for the listeners to know about you. Things like, I think it's important. I mean, I was told you never ask a woman her age, but I think it's important that they know your age.
Yeah.
Because for a young person to say, you know what I want to do? Death care is not normal in this industry, right? It's an industry where its families have dropped down and said, this is what you're going to do. So tell us a little bit about you and who you are, what you like to do, just like grown up here. Tell us.
Yeah. So my name is Julia, as we said before. I was born in Sacramento, raised in Roseville. So I've been in this area of Placer County for most of my life. And yeah, I graduated from the mortuary school program at American River College in December of 2024. So I was 24, or no, 25. I was 25 when I graduated from there. Yeah.
Cool. And so you stalked us for a little bit because you graduated and then you went and worked in a funeral home for a minute, but you always had this like desire, because we have a weird connection of how you kind of know about Morgan Oaks, but what was it about Morgan Oaks or the Green Burial world that you were like, I'm really intrigued. I want to go there one day when I grow up?
Yeah. Well, my interest in Green Burial started before I ever even went to mortuary school.
Okay.
I think it was just always something I knew I wanted for myself personally, that I just wanted to return to the earth naturally. And then learning about Morgan Oaks, again, before I even went into mortuary school, it was just that it was so close to me. I mean, it's the only one in the whole state like this. So just that proximity, and then also just really believing in what you guys do out there, what we do out there, is what really drew me to that line of work.
I love that. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about mortuary school, because it's not like, so I have a degree in criminal justice. You don't just like pick a school and like pretty much everyone has like a communications degree. It's hard to find a mortuary school.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about the mortuary program at American River College, which is in Carmichael.
Yes. Yeah. So that mortuary program is only one of two in the entire state of California.
Wow.
So there's one at American River and there's one down in Los Angeles. And yeah, when I realized that I'm 20 minutes away from one of the only accredited mortuary programs in the whole state, I just figured like, I might as well try it out, being so close to it.
Yeah.
They've recently built like a really big, beautiful facility that they do a lot of their work out of there now. When I was going at the time, it was being built. So of course, right after I left was when it came to fruition. But it's a really wonderful program, wonderful professors, wonderful experiences that I had there. I met a lot of young people like me entering the industry. So I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity to go and learn there and just get a little bit of experience before being pushed into the real world and experiencing what that is like as well.
Yeah,
So,
to think that that's in our backyard.
Yeah.
And I know for a lot of people, it again, isn't something that you're like, oh, I want to go to mortuary school. But to know it's at American River College, which is a junior college here in our
really
area.
accessible.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How long is the program?
The program, they have two different versions. So there's a 2-year program and there's a 1-year program.
Okay.
They're the same program. I think the 1 year is just, more condensed, so you get to do more quickly. I personally went through the 1-year program, which everybody said that was crazy. It's too much work. But honestly, I found the workload to be really like doable. It also kind of depends, if you're going to be working part-time at the same time. But the 1-year program is what I did, and it really worked for me.
Okay, so talk to me about this schooling. It's probably, I think of like, this is so silly. The listeners are like, you're so silly. But I think of it as like esthetician school, where you kind of learn a broad knowledge of things, and then you probably pick like, what is my thing
avenue.
I want to do?
Yeah.
So do you learn everything?
A little bit of everything. Obviously there's only so much you can fit into like one curriculum program. But I think they did a lot of different areas of the industry. One of the things I think that they really focused on is getting people prepared to take those national and state board exams. So that was like the number one thing that I received from this program was all of that knowledge, where to seek out that knowledge when you're studying for these exams, because you know, those exams are really your ticket into the industry. So that was wonderful. And they taught, you know, they had counseling classes where they would set up like fake arrangements with families where you would sit down and go through these, you know, scenarios of what it could be like sitting in the arrangement room, writing contracts with people. We had embalming classes. So I went in and did embalmings in order to graduate from the program. I knew early on I didn't want to necessarily go into the embalming, but I learned so much from learning that side of the industry, excuse me. And they went over cosmetics and restoration. So if someone, you know, has something going on with their face that they need fixed before some sort of viewing, like they taught us how to basically create like a whole human ear out of modeling wax and like just all these different things. And then of course, you know, like the merchandise side of things, you know, funeral home management. So it was a little bit of everything.
So when did you know you wanted to go into death care? And like, what was that path for you? Like, did something happen? Did you just wake up and you're like, I just love death stuff? Like, what did that look like?
That's not that far off. I mean, to be honest, I always have different answers for this question because that's always the number one question I get is why did you go into this? And for me, I think I have so many different answers because I have so many different reasons. But I mean, all growing up, I was always fascinated with the human body, the human experience. As I got older, I got really into cosmetics and makeup, and I just would always think about like, what would it be like to do makeup on someone before their final viewing, or just little things like that. I'd think about it in the back of my head, but I never really thought I was going to actually go for it. When I initially went to college right after high school, I think I was enrolled for like 2 years before dropping out because I just did not know what direction I wanted to go in. And it wasn't until reading, you know, different books written by different morticians, different blogs, different videos, that it just really started to feel like a possibility, like this is something I can get into. And then learning again that ARC was 20 minutes away, I was like, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot because I feel like I can do it. And I think if you have that inclining, you should follow it and see what happens. And I ended up just absolutely loving it, and it just really registered.
And you're really good at it. I mean, luckily we don't do embalming at Morgan Oak, so we don't have to worry about that. I can only imagine what that process is like, so I'm glad that that's not for us. But so that's awesome. So now that once you started working in funeral homes, okay, so go back to funeral home side. What do you think was the thing that surprised you the most, or was the thing that you were like, maybe caught you off guard?
A lot of things, you know, because in school, they can only create so many scenarios. You know, you don't really know what that's like until you're really in that world. And so I think what was most surprising to me was, you know, I wanted this to feel so much more. I was expecting to feel these really close bonds, these really strong connections. And I did with a lot of the families that I worked with. But I think what I wasn't expecting was that a lot of people come into the funeral home with like an inherent distrust in the process. And, you know, that was something that I kind of had to learn to grapple with because, of course, I just want to be helpful. I just want to serve. I just want to try and make this family's experience as smooth and easy as it can be because I know I can't make it better, but I can try to just alleviate any additional stressors. And it wasn't until I was really working with families that I realized, like, all I can do is my absolute best with these families. But at the end of the day, if they walk out crying, it's not because I didn't do something right. It's because they're grieving. And I can't do anything to fix that. I think a lot of people say, like, well, what's the thing to say? We talked about, I remember last month with your guest that you had on here, like, what do you say to someone who's in the throes of grief, especially so soon after someone has passed? It's not having the right answer. It's listening and being present and knowing that maybe you won't have the strongest bond with this person, but I came in and I did my job right and I know that I helped their loved one get to where they needed to be. And so I think I had to take a lot of myself out of it. You know, I can't take it personally when families don't trust me right off the bat. I have to trust in the process and know that I'm here doing the right thing, that these families' needs are being met. And that's really all that I can do at the end of the day is just do my best. And I go from there.
I don't disagree. I do think that it is scary as a family that comes in when they're grieving, going into a funeral home. And I hear a lot lately. I haven't done this before, so I don't know what to expect. And I think the funeral industry in general, funeral and cemetery, that grouping, it can feel a little icky and salesy at times. And so I know that one of the things that you pride yourself on, and which we love at Morgan Oaks, is like, I'm not going to sell you on something you don't need. Number one, I can't at Morgan Oaks. We don't have any upsells because there is nothing else.
It's true.
But you get it. Like, and I think that's so good for somebody so young to be so open to like, okay, how can I earn your trust?
Yeah. How can I meet you where you're at?
Yes. So that's good. Okay. So you told us at school what it prepared you really well for the testing. For those people listening, the testing is hard. It is hard and it's a lot. So what do you think you were least prepared for when you came in from like a schooling perspective? Did you feel like there was anything that you're like, man, I wish we would have learned more about this?
Definitely green burial.
Okay.
You know, it was very much brought up in passing, like here's all the traditional funeral home information, and then but there's also green burial, but nobody really does that.
Yeah,
it was kind of treated as like an afterthought, like this is available, but like there's no money to really be made there, so which we know is not the truth. So that was something I wish they had touched on more, is how can funeral homes prepare someone for a green burial? What does that look like? You know, what materials are allowed versus not allowed? What does shrouding look like? You know, there's different types of shrouds for different faiths and different, you know, religious groups. And so I think just touching on little things like that. We did go over a lot of religious groups in mortuary school, which I thought was wonderful. They would bring in folks from the LDS church or a Muslim church, or, you know, just different faiths to kind of show what what their funeral rites look like, which I loved. But I think we could have done more to talk about green burial and just what that looks like and what that option looks like.
It's an evolving thing, right? Like, I don't think until Morgan Oaks came into play, I don't really believe that it was something that was really talked about. I mean, my listeners might disagree because I've been researching it forever, but I don't know that it was as discussed. And so I think for a lot of schools and a lot of funeral homes, it's like, oh yeah, when someone asks about it, we'll deal with it then. Well, now we're seeing people ask about it all the time, and people are like, oh no, I need to be educated. Can you send me a YouTube video on how to do it?
Just green options in general. I know it was just recently legalized in California, but it's been in operation in other states. The human composting or natural organic reduction, I believe is what they have it labeled here in California. And aquamation, you know, folks would call and be like, what is this? Like, how can I find out more about this? And I think it would be a good idea to have students, you know, learn what those are, where they're available, the changing legislation, you know, it's all pretty new. But I think just arming them with that information of how can I point someone in this direction if this is what they're looking for.
I think that's so great. Okay, so now that you're on the cemetery side, a little bit different, but kind of the same. How has your perspective changed on death care, or like, what do you see different now that you're on this side? Or maybe what do you like better? Or what does that look like to you?
I think being on the cemetery side of things, especially with green burial, it's really just affirmed those thoughts and feelings I had going into mortuary school initially, which was that death care can be creative, it can be ever changing. And, you know, I think in the traditional funeral home sense, you know, they have their formula and they stick to it, right? Because maybe that's what works best for them. But sometimes I think thinking outside the box, those opportunities for growth and change within the funeral industry, I think is really important. And I see a lot of that within green burial and green funeral spaces, is more conversations about like what's changing, what's new. Whereas before, I think maybe it was very formulaic. I think it's kind of breaking out of that mold. And so it reaffirms that it can be a little bit different. It doesn't have to be, you know, nothing has to fit into a mold. they can all be a little bit different.
I love that you say that because like you said in the beginning to the listener, she's 26. I could be her mother. But what's so interesting is I dealt with death every year for like 6 years. We had someone die in December. And it was like, finally you'd call your family and be like, no one is leaving the home. Everybody call each other. So I knew what death looked like. I was one of the few kids who had been to multiple funerals. I had seen caskets. I had seen that whole thing. So it didn't scare me. Death has never scared me. I don't like it. I don't like my loved ones passing or people, but I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I have to go to a funeral and I don't know how to control this. And so I think, but it was always the same thing. Someone was embalmed, put in this crazy casket. There was a viewing. You would walk up, you would see your loved one dead like that. Like, I didn't understand. Now I don't understand why we did that, I guess, but like, it was like, you go to this cemetery and you have a headstone and, it was, these are the things you do and this is how you do it. And you wouldn't, heaven forbid you would do something outside of that because it was like, whoa, that's weird. Why are you doing that? Whereas I feel like at Morgan Oaks, and this has been my vision since I came here. And I love that you and everybody that works for us feels the same way, as how can we make this look beautiful for each family? And each family is so different. And honestly, I think that being creative and being innovative allows for a healthy healing and grieving process.
I agree.
And I think it's so cool that we can say, hey, do you want to plant a tree? Or, hey, what kind of headstone do you want? Or, we have a pet garden and we have a podcast. So you could send this to your loved one and they could hear about it. Or maybe you want to see our social media, or maybe you want to hike on our trail or learn about our birds. And I think at first people were a little nervous that like we were different. And now people are seeing like, wow. And especially your group. What are you, Gen?
I'm technically Gen Z.
Gen Z. Right? Okay. So Gen Z, I think, is having this healthy, like, wow, death doesn't have to be so sad. Like, wow, I could go do something different. Right. And so we have a lot of young people that inquire about what we do or want to know more about this industry. And I think it's cool to bring younger people into the industry because it's not a young industry.
Yeah.
And I think it needs to be innovative. So you did mention not waiting until mortuary school to get involved. Okay. So, again, I think it's so interesting to think, oh my gosh, having my kids come to me and be like, Mom, I want to learn about death. That would be interesting. But say they did. What are some ways that if someone was curious, they could start learning or getting experience now in something like this?
Yeah. Well, I'll preface by saying like no one in my family was a mortician. I hadn't even met a mortician until I started my program. So I was very much starting from scratch when I joined mortuary school. And it was about a month after starting mortuary school that I got hired into the funeral home. Okay. So everything kind of happened all at the same time. And something I wish I would have done beforehand was, I had done a little educating myself, reading books, watching videos, but I guess I just never felt emboldened to just go apply at a funeral home. There's a lot of positions within a funeral home that don't require any sort of mortuary school experience or degrees, whether you want to be doing pickups, going into people's homes, hospitals, morgues, picking up their loved ones, bringing them back to the funeral home.
So some people are like, why would I ever want to do that? But there are people, and and I think that's why, not to cut you off, that this podcast is so important to me, is because this is a hard industry for me to find people like you that want to work for us. And so if there's someone listening that's like, man, this has been in my heart to serve families, love them well, serve them well, and in their darkest moments, be able to be a light and helpful. Like that is what I hope to get out of this. And I think I want listeners to understand what you and I and the other side have to go through to get to here. So, okay, keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, and even to say like picking up, that was one of my favorite parts of the job, which like you say, who would ever want to do that? And then I hear that, I go, me, I would love to do that. But yeah, and then, even just like working in the office, being a funeral attendant, someone who can just help out at the funeral home during services. There's a lot of different things that you can do in the funeral home without having to go to mortuary school. And I wish I had started at a funeral home before, just so I could get some real life experience before going into school. And then, whereas I had the opposite experience, which was schooling and then real world experience. It would have been nice to have that going into it. And I don't think I knew that was an available option for me. And so that's one thing I wish I had done, was just start working at a funeral home before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that way you can also kind of figure out what avenues you like versus don't like. You know, I really understand what the funeral directors are doing. I want to do that, or embalming, anything like that. So,
or
I think just
come
that
to Morgan Oaks and
or you could do cemetery side of things. That was something we didn't really touch on very much in mortuary school as a whole, was cemetery side of things.
Yeah.
You know, it's a different license, it's a different avenue, so I understand that, but it's a huge part of the industry. I mean, there's a lot of combo locations, funeral homes on the cemetery. So I think it's just kind of finding your niche, finding what feels good and what feels comfortable, and just exploring that.
I love that. Yeah. Okay, so as we kind of wind this down, I would love to know, I mean, this is something I get asked a lot. It's heavy work, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually. What do you do to decompress and kind of get through that?
I love to be outside. I love to get outside, get fresh air. I mean, being at Morgan Oaks now, it's wonderful. I can just open up the office doors and go on a beautiful walk and come back and feel refreshed. But just being outside, being with my friends, being with my family. My boyfriend is in the industry as well, so it's nice to have someone to kind of talk to about that as well. But I think just finding the things that make me feel grounded again and make me feel like me, you know, because I think it's really easy to enmesh this industry into your whole life.
Yes,
but I do think it's important to find a balance as much as you can, right? I know when I was at the funeral home, I was on call. So, you know, 1 week out of the month, 24 hours, I could get a call at any time and have to help someone in any state of mind.
Sure.
So you always have to be on. So I think finding those times where you can carve out for yourself to turn off, and just be yourself, do your thing, and then when you're ready, getting back into it.
And she also likes to binge The Pit.
Yes.
We've been talking about that. So that gets, you know, again, though, it's a like hospital show. I know. And it's probably, I mean, still deals
not
with
the most relaxing, but still. For me, it is, I guess.
I get it. Okay. So if listeners can remember just one thing about Green Burial, entering the funeral industry, the cemetery, what would you want that to be?
I would think just start asking questions. Educate yourself, especially if there isn't a lot of curriculum out there about Green Burial. Just emboldening yourself to go out and search for that information. And, you know, if that route of mortuary school and becoming a funeral director, becoming an embalmer is something that you're interested in, I still think it's important to branch out and learn as much as you can about the industry, which includes Green Burial and green funeral options. I think we should be just as well-versed on those options as traditional options. So yeah, just like, you know, finding that self-confidence to just like start asking questions, start doing some research. And like I said, just finding that avenue that just kind of fits with you. Yeah. And sometimes you don't know that avenue until you really start doing it. And it's okay to start one thing and maybe pivot to another direction. And kind of like I became a licensed funeral director and then immediately stopped practicing as a funeral director and went to a cemetery. So it's just kind of about finding what feels good and makes you feel valuable. And
I love that.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, if you're like, man, now I've like got this little bit of like, I want to know more. I always like for people to know that Morgan Oaks is a place where you could call and you could call and say, hey, can I talk to Julia? And she would answer a question about it. Or you could call and ask me like, hey, I have some questions. Like, we want to be a tool, a resource for people if they're like, hey, can you tell me a little bit more? Like, where could I find some information about the schooling? Obviously, the Google can tell you. But maybe they want to pick your brain. Julia is at Morgan Oaks, so you can reach out to us there and pick her brain. You can come visit us at Morgan Oaks. We have some events coming up, of course. So make sure you follow us on our Instagram, on our TikTok. We have a Facebook page and a YouTube page. So all of those places you can find, you know, what are our next events. We like to have fun out there. So we have a Pause and Pose this month.
I'm so excited.
Coffee and if you're wondering what Pause and Pose is, that's a dog event for Valentine's Day. And then we have Coffee and Conversations where we'll have a funeral home and us there to speak. So there's lots of things that you can get information, come speak with us, pick our brains. But if nothing else, you know, thank you, Julia, for spending time. Thank you for getting into this industry. We feel blessed to have you, and you're such an asset to the team. So we're glad that you said yes.
Thank you very much. I feel very lucky to be here.
Good. We love it. So for our listeners, thank you for listening. Walk gently, remember deeply, and celebrate the legacy of life.